People vanish every day, but some disappearances are so strange, so deeply unsettling, they seem to defy reality itself. No evidence. No witnesses. No answers. Just the eerie silence left behind. In this video, we'll uncover 5 of the most chilling cases where people didn't just disappear. It was as if they were erased. These stories aren't just unsolved, they feel impossible. And yet, they happened. Or at least, something did. Let's begin. Welcome to Unsolved Archives, where we delve into the hidden, the mysterious, and the unanswered. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insight could be the key to unlocking the truth. The Vanishing of Elias Thorn. Elias Thorn was a 34-year-old nature photographer whose passion for capturing raw, untouched wilderness had led him to some of the most isolated places in North America. Known for his haunting images of abandoned places and remote forests, Elias had recently turned his attention to Sky Ridge National Forest in Montana, an expanse of thick woods and jagged cliffs where few dared to venture alone. In October of 2002, Elias informed his sister, Melanie, that he would be embarking on a week-long photography expedition into Sky Ridge. It wasn't unusual for him to go off the grid, but this time he brought along a newly purchased handheld video recorder, intending to document not just photographs, but the journey itself. He promised to return by October 12th. On October 13th, when no word came, Melanie contacted local rangers. Within hours, a search party was deployed. They located his van parked at the edge of the forest, just beyond the official trailhead. Inside were his wallet, a map with hand-drawn marks around the northeast ridge, and a short note, following the ravine north. Found something odd. Will document. The next day, rangers discovered Elias's tent in a small clearing 2 miles deep into the forest. Nothing appeared out of place. His backpack, sleeping bag, and even an untouched freeze-dried meal were all present. Most strangely, his video camera was mounted on a tripod, still recording, pointed toward an empty grove. Reviewing the footage, investigators saw hours of still forest. Then, at 3:42 a.m. on the third night, something unusual happened. A low, mechanical hum filled the audio. The camera lens distorted slightly, as though affected by heat waves, but no fire or light was visible. A faint shadow, elongated and almost crawling along the edge of the trees, crossed the frame. No animals, no wind. Just the sound and the shifting dark. Authorities chalked it up to possible wildlife interference, though no prints or disturbances were found near the campsite. A full search ensued. Drones, bloodhounds, and even infrared sweeps covered a 12-mile radius, but no trace of Elias was ever found. An odd detail soon emerged from an old Forest Service record. In 1961, a fire lookout named Warren Greeley had documented a structure made of rusted metal and strange angles, deep in the same northeast ravine Elias had marked on his map. Greeley claimed it wasn't on any cartographer's record, nor did it resemble a shack, cabin, or vehicle. He sketched it, filed the report, and 2 weeks later, disappeared without a trace during a solo patrol. Elias's footage was handed over to a private forensics lab at the insistence of Melanie, who refused to believe her brother had simply gotten lost. Audio specialists discovered that the hum heard on the camera had an irregular modulation, too structured to be organic, but also unlike any known mechanical source. Sound engineers speculated it could be a low-frequency communication signal, but its origin and pattern remained unidentified. Internet forums obsessed with lost hikers and unexplained events picked up the story. A user named Forest Whisper claimed to have hiked Sky Ridge in 1998 and found a dome-like structure half buried in ivy and soil that gave them intense vertigo. When they returned the next day with a friend, it was gone. Elias Thorn's disappearance became a magnet for conspiracy theorists. Some believed he found a military test facility, long since buried by time. Others suggested he stumbled upon an interdimensional rift. One fringe theory claimed the forest had a consciousness and selected Elias as it had selected others before him. Authorities, however, listed the case as an unresolved missing persons report with no signs of foul play. Years later, a park ranger named Dean Halvorson found a camera lens cap with Elias Thorn's initials engraved on it, 15 miles southeast of his original campsite, wedged in a rock crevice. It was the only new clue in nearly a decade. Forensic examination found faint traces of water damage and soil that didn't match the surrounding geology, leading to speculation that it had been transported from elsewhere. Melanie eventually published a book titled Vanishing, chronicling Elias's life and disappearance. In the final chapter she wrote, "Elias always said the wild hides its secrets not out of malice, but out of nature's instinct to remain unknowable. Maybe, just maybe, he found what he was looking for." To this day, no one has found the mysterious structure. No other person has disappeared in that area since, though some hikers have reported strange pressure in their ears and temporary disorientation when hiking near the northeast ridge. Sky Ridge remains open to the public, but signage now warns visitors to stay on marked trails and avoid night hikes. The Aurum Station Incident. Aurum Metro Station was once part of an expansive underground rail system in Hemsley City, a quiet town in southern England known more for its Gothic architecture and foggy streets than its bustling nightlife. By the late 1980s, the Aurum line had fallen into disuse. Aurum Station, in particular, had only a few scheduled trains each day, most of them cargo or maintenance runs. It was dimly lit, structurally sound but eerie, with its tiled walls yellowed from decades of grime and coal dust. It became known locally as the Ghost Platform. On June 3, 1989, at precisely 11:14 p.m., 37-year-old Evelyn Morse entered Aurum Station. She had just finished her shift as a night supervisor at a textile plant 2 stops away. She was familiar with the route, had taken it for years. She was wearing a beige coat, carrying a canvas shoulder bag, and walked with a purposeful gait, as captured by the station's only functioning CCTV camera, perched high in the northwest corner. The footage shows Evelyn descending the stairs, scanning the empty station with mild caution, then walking toward platform 3. There were no attendants on duty at that hour. A janitor who had been cleaning a level above claimed to have seen her just minutes before the incident, describing her as quiet and tired-looking, but normal. At 11:17 p.m., Evelyn stopped near the yellow safety line and looked down the tunnel. Her posture changed. She stiffened, tilted her head, and appeared to squint into the darkness. For 13 seconds, she stood completely still. Then, without warning, her body tensed, her bag fell from her shoulder, and she stepped forward, 1 foot onto the tracks. But she didn't fall. She vanished. The footage, grainy but clear enough, shows her image flicker for a brief second, almost as if there were a distortion in the tape. Her body seems to blur at the edges, then disappear entirely. No train was scheduled. No alarms sounded. There was no wind, no electrical malfunction, no sound picked up by the camera's audio. Just silence and an empty tunnel. Police reviewed the footage repeatedly. Experts were brought in to rule out tampering. All found the tape to be authentic. Her bag was recovered, still containing her wallet, keys, and a paperback novel. The bag itself had a small tear, as if it had been pulled by something, but there were no fingerprints, no fibers, and no damage to the strap. The disappearance of Evelyn Morse remained local news until 3 days later, when station worker Paul Hastings reported a strange echo coming from the same tunnel Evelyn had stared into. He said it sounded like a whisper, though the words were unintelligible. When he went to investigate, he found nothing, but said he felt an overwhelming sense of vertigo that made him vomit on the platform. He resigned the next day and refused interviews for years. After the incident, Aurum Station was temporarily closed for investigation and safety evaluation. Internal memos later leaked to the press showed that city engineers found nothing structurally wrong, but did note interference patterns in the station's power grid that could not be explained by the equipment present. The station never reopened. By 1993, it was fully sealed and removed from the official metro maps. Urban explorers attempted to break in several times, and footage from 2001 shows a group managing to reach the platform. What they found was unsettling. The entire space was covered in a faint layer of soot, the walls seemed to vibrate slightly when exposed to bright light, and one member claimed to hear someone humming under the floor. They left in a panic and never returned. Theories about Evelyn's disappearance range from rational to bizarre. Some suggest she suffered a psychotic break and fled the station unnoticed, though there were no other exits, and her body was never found. Others believe Aurum Station is a folded space, an area where the rules of reality briefly slipped. A popular internet theory posits the idea of temporal siphoning, a hypothetical phenomenon where a person can be accidentally displaced from time due to weak dimensional boundaries. Perhaps the most disturbing clue came in 2014, when Evelyn's niece, Clara Morse, received a letter addressed to her aunt. It had no return address and was postmarked in Poland. Inside was a faded photograph of what appeared to be an older Evelyn, standing on a cracked concrete platform. Her face was gaunt but unmistakable. The background was a tunnel, but not one familiar to anyone in Hemsley. Scribbled on the back were the words, "Still waiting for the train." Authorities dismissed the photo as a hoax. Clara swears it's real. To this day, the entrance to Aurum Station remains welded shut, though the city officially denies that it still exists. Locals say if you stand near the old entrance on a quiet night, you can hear the soft rush of wind from beneath the ground and, sometimes, the sound of footsteps pacing a platform no one should be able to reach. The Lighthouse Family. Winter's Hollow Isle lies off the coast of Nova Scotia, battered by Atlantic storms and shrouded in persistent fog. The isle has no permanent residents and is only accessible by ferry twice a week. Its only structure is a century-old lighthouse, once crucial for ships navigating the treacherous rocks that edge the bay. In 1977, a family of 4, Thomas and Eleanor Dwyer, along with their 2 children, Samuel, 11, and June, 7, moved to the island as part of the Canadian Coast Guard's rotating Lightkeeper program. Thomas, a retired naval technician, had long sought a quieter life away from the city, and Eleanor believed the isolation would help strengthen their bond. They arrived in September, just before the heavy fog season. The lighthouse was equipped with a radio system, a small generator, and a food stockpile designed to last for several months. The arrangement was simple: regular check-ins every 3 days, weather reports twice daily, and emergency flares in case of distress. All communications from the Dwyer family were routine and upbeat until November 12. That morning, the radio fell silent. Coast Guard Command tried several times to reach them over the next 48 hours. On November 14, a patrol vessel was sent to investigate. What they found on Winter's Hollow was chilling. The island was deathly quiet. The generator was still running. The lighthouse beacon still turned slowly in its rhythmic arc. The home adjoining the tower was warm, and the dining table was set for lunch: bowls of clam chowder, half-eaten bread, and warm tea. A child's scarf lay on the floor near the fireplace. Nothing appeared broken. No signs of a struggle. But no one was there. The entire family had vanished. All coats and boots remained in place. The emergency flare gun was still locked in its cabinet. Samuel's journal was found open on his bed. The last entry read, "Dad says the sea is singing tonight. Mom told us not to go outside. June keeps staring at the window." Divers searched the waters around the island, thinking perhaps one of the family members had fallen in and the others had tried to rescue them. But no bodies were recovered. The shoreline showed no unusual footprints, only the usual weathered stone and lichen. The lighthouse's logbook, meticulously kept by Thomas, ended abruptly on November 11 with the phrase, "Strange light on the water. Hovering. No engine sound." Eleanor worried. News of the disappearance quickly spread through Nova Scotia. The official report described the family as missing under unknown circumstances, but rumors told a more unsettling story. Fishermen who had passed near Winter's Hollow the night of the 11th claimed to have seen a column of blue light descending from the sky, resting just above the waves near the island. One man, Harold Costas, insisted he saw what looked like shadows walking up the beam before it blinked out. Skeptics dismissed the stories as embellishments, fueled by isolation and superstition. Yet, others pointed to a disturbing pattern. In 1901, the island's original lighthouse keeper, Angus Rayner, reportedly abandoned his post and was later found wandering naked on the mainland beach, muttering in Gaelic. He was institutionalized and died 2 months later. His journal mentioned the sea's voice and a song meant to summon. In 1949, a maintenance crew staying overnight on the island reported waking to see all the clocks had stopped at 3:17 a.m. One man swore he heard a child's laughter echoing from the top of the tower, though no children were present. That incident was buried in internal reports, but resurfaced decades later when a retired Coast Guard official leaked documents to a paranormal investigation group. Back in the mainland town of Port Eston, Eleanor's sister Grace waited weeks for news, hoping for a call or a letter. On Christmas Eve of that year, she received a postcard. It was unsigned, but featured a painting of the Winters Hollow lighthouse. On the back, a short sentence was written in elegant cursive: "The light never goes out." The postcard was postmarked from a village in northern Greenland, a place where no one could explain how it was sent, or who might have delivered it. The handwriting, she claimed, was unmistakably Eleanor's. After 1977, Winters Hollow Lighthouse was decommissioned and access to the island was heavily restricted. Officially, it was too costly to maintain. Unofficially, it had become a place whispered about in local pubs and referenced in hushed tones by sailors. Some claimed it was a thin point, a rift between worlds. Others said the ocean there was cursed, hungry, as one old fisherman described it. In 2005, a documentary crew attempted to reach Winters Hollow to film a special on maritime mysteries. Their footage, recovered from a storm-wrecked boat, showed only fog and static. The final scene recorded a faint knocking sound, as if on glass, and the words of a child whispering, "We're still here." To this day, the island remains off-limits. No further investigations have been permitted. The lighthouse still lights the sea each night, maintained remotely through an automated system. But locals say they've seen figures moving inside, silhouettes against the glow, pacing slowly up the tower's spiral staircase. The empty bus. In the vast, sun-scorched deserts of southern Arizona, Route 96 is a lonely highway that stretches for nearly 200 miles without a single permanent settlement. Truckers call it the Corridor of Silence, due to frequent radio dead zones and mysterious engine failures that have plagued vehicles for decades. But its most haunting tale began on August 19, 2011, when a Route 96 public transit bus was found idling in the middle of the road. Doors open, engine humming, but not a soul in sight. The bus, numbered AZT 501, was on its scheduled evening run, departing from the small town of Morrow's End at 6:10 p.m. with 16 passengers and one driver. It was due to reach its final destination, Ryman Crossing, by 9:45 p.m. It never arrived. At 10:03 p.m., a passing motorist named Deborah Klein spotted the bus parked diagonally across both lanes of the highway about 40 miles from the nearest town. Thinking it might have broken down, she pulled over. What she found was deeply unsettling. There was no driver inside. The front windshield was intact. The engine was still running. The headlights were on, and the interior lights flickered faintly. All 16 passenger seats were empty, but belongings remained: purses, phones, half-drunk soda bottles, a Walkman still playing soft jazz on loop. A child's plush rabbit lay in the aisle. Deborah called 911, her voice shaking, and waited in her car with the doors locked until authorities arrived. When police and highway patrol reached the scene, they found no signs of forced entry or struggle. All the personal items left on board were catalogued, and security footage from a dash-mounted camera was retrieved. What they saw deepened the mystery. The recording showed the bus traveling smoothly through the arid landscape until 8:53 p.m. Then, without warning, the video became scrambled with flickers of static and digital distortion. For exactly 13 minutes, nothing was visible but warped lines and an intermittent high-pitched frequency. At 9:06 p.m., the video resumed. The bus was empty. The driver, David Ramos, a 42-year-old with a clean record and over 10 years of experience, was last seen calmly adjusting the rearview mirror just before the distortion began. In the final frame, a faint shadow, shaped vaguely like a tall human figure, could be seen at the very back of the bus. It did not match any known passenger. Investigators traced the GPS logs of the vehicle. Strangely, during those missing 13 minutes, The bus veered approximately 1.2 miles off the designated highway and into open desert, an area with no roads, signs, or tire tracks. Even more bizarre, the digital records showed that the bus returned to the highway precisely at the same spot it left, as if it had followed an invisible path. Search parties scoured the surrounding desert for days. No footprints, no clothing, no remains. Drones revealed a strange circular pattern in the sand, roughly 1.3 miles north of the location where the bus was found. The formation, about 60 feet in diameter, appeared to have been scorched into the desert floor, but soil analysis showed no evidence of heat or chemical residue. Just hardened, compacted earth. The families of the missing were left with no answers. One mother, Lydia Harper, claimed she received a text from her daughter's phone at 2:11 a.m. the night of the incident. It contained just one word: through. The phone was never found. Cellular towers showed no activity from the device. Within weeks, conspiracy theorists latched onto the story. Some suggested alien abduction, pointing to the electromagnetic interference and the circular pattern. Others argued for a top-secret military experiment, suggesting Route 96 passed near an unacknowledged facility. A few went deeper, proposing that Route 96 was not just a road, but a ley vein, a convergence point for dimensional energy that occasionally thinned. Years passed with no progress. The bus, kept in impound for analysis, began to exhibit strange electrical behavior. Lights would flicker erratically, interior speakers occasionally broadcast static even when disconnected from power, and workers claimed to hear murmurs inside when alone. Eventually, it was moved to a secured hangar, and all public access was denied. In 2017, a retired Department of Transportation worker anonymously leaked a document titled Interim Report, Incident AZT 501. It referenced an unapproved stop known as Point Delta, not listed on any maps, positioned precisely where the GPS had registered the bus's desert detour. It also included a phrase allegedly pulled from recovered audio: "Don't look directly at it." What it was, the report never clarified. Local authorities still insist the case remains open. But there are no suspects, no leads, and no clear explanation. Every August 19th, on the anniversary of the event, some people return to the same stretch of Route 96 and park their cars at sunset. They leave empty seats facing the desert. Some claim to hear a distant engine approaching through the sand. A few say they've seen figures inside a phantom bus, barely visible on the horizon, its headlights flickering like a dying star before vanishing into the darkness. The road remains open. The warning signs posted by the county read simply, "Travel at your own risk." The Mirror Village. In the dense northern forests of Romania, near the edge of the Carpathian Mountains, there lies a region few locals dare to enter. Old maps refer to it as Valea Umbrelor, Valley of Shadows. Tucked inside this valley once stood a small village called Ilanuca, a place not found on any modern GPS or satellite imagery. It was whispered about in the surrounding towns as a place of silence, a place that forgot how to age. The village came to international attention in 1996, when a group of 6 anthropology students from Cluj University set out on a research expedition. Led by Professor Andrei Motin, they had uncovered references to Ilanuca in a series of 18th-century texts describing a settlement mirrored by itself and outside the time of men. These references, though vague, captivated the team. Their goal was to find remnants of the site, document any oral history, and verify whether the village ever existed. They never returned. 2 weeks after they were expected back, authorities launched a search. After days of trekking through thick underbrush and forgotten trails, searchers found their base camp, but it had been abandoned. Not hastily, everything was tidy. Equipment was neatly packed, food supplies untouched. There was no damage, no footprints beyond their own. It was as if the group had simply gotten up and walked away. Then, they found the camcorder. Buried beneath a pile of leaves near a ridge above the valley, the device's battery was long dead, but the cassette inside remained intact. When played, the footage began in typical documentary fashion, students laughing, charting maps, filming flora and fauna. Then came the final recording. The camera sat still on a rock, aimed at a clearing. The audio was muffled by wind, but voices could be heard whispering. The group was arguing. In the distance, there was a figure, a young girl in white, standing at the tree line. She didn't move. A few of the students tried calling out to her. Then, suddenly, she turned and walked into the trees. The camera was picked up and followed. Through the woods, branches whipping past the lens. Then the camera froze again as they emerged into a clearing. And there it was. A village, silent, pristine, and untouched by time. Stone houses with clean windows, gardens in bloom despite the cold season, clothes hung neatly on lines that swayed without wind. But no people. Just mirrors. Dozens of tall, full-length mirrors positioned in front of every door and window. Each mirror reflected not the village in front of it, but something else. One student approached a mirror and gasped. He was looking into a version of himself, but aged by decades, eyes wide with fear, mouthing words silently. Another mirror showed one of the girls surrounded by flames, desperately slamming her hands against the glass. Panic set in. Screams. The camera dropped to the ground. More shouting. A voice screamed, "Don't look into them." Then silence. The tape ended. The Romanian government quickly shut down the area, declaring it environmentally hazardous. Satellite images began showing deliberate digital blurring over the region. Villagers nearby were interviewed, but all denied the village ever existed. Some grew visibly frightened when asked. A man in his 70s muttered, "The mirrors remember. That's why we don't." Over the years, stories resurfaced. A lone hiker found walking in circles for hours, saying he was looking for his other self. A drone that flew into the valley and crashed. When recovered, its onboard camera showed it capturing footage of a village that disappeared the moment the drone crossed a certain altitude. In 2012, an anonymous online user posted a series of photos on a dark web forum, claiming to have found Ilanuka. The images showed the same village, eerily preserved, with mirror frames now shattered and weathered. One photo showed 6 figures standing still in a town square, their skin cracked like porcelain, faces turned toward the sun but eyes empty. The image was taken down within hours, and the account was deleted. But the strangest incident occurred in 2020, when Professor Moten's niece received a letter from an unknown sender. Inside was a black and white photograph of her uncle, seemingly unchanged from the day he disappeared, staring into a mirror. In the reflection, his face was blurred, distorted into a scream. Scribbled beneath the photo were the words, "We never left. We're just on the other side now." Today, no roads lead to Ilanuka. The trees have swallowed the paths. The valley is still, quiet, and colder than the land around it. Locals say mirrors should never be brought near the valley's edge, that their reflections act as doorways, and that some doors once opened, refuse to close. And sometimes, travelers near the region say they see another forest, just out of sync, like a ghost echo, where people walk backward, shadows move first, and reflections smile before you do. Every case adds a new layer of mystery, leaving more questions than answers. Which one lingers in your mind, and what's your take on what really happened?